9th, 2025 at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber, which has been duly noticed in 2 places, including the city's website, in accordance with the requirements of RSA 91A. The prayer will be offered by City Clerk Dan Healy, and Alderman Jetty will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance, please.
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderwoman Timmons. Alderman Moran.
Present.
Alderman Thibodeau.
Here.
Alderman Govea.
Here.
Alderman Lopez.
Here.
Alderman Sullivan.
Here.
Alderman Clements.
Here.
Alderman Sennett.
Here.
Alderman Jetty.
Here.
Alderman Tebow.
Here.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Here.
Alderman Wilshire.
Here.
14 present, 1 absent.
Thank you very much. Also joining us this evening is Mayor Jim Donchis and Corporation Counsel Steve Bolton. So tonight we had, well, let me back up. We had a listening session at the public library a couple weeks ago about these issues. We did not put public comment on our agenda so that we could get through the discussion of what the city can look to do to help resolve this issue. So it's going to be more of a discussion amongst the board and city staff, but we wanted people here so they know what we're doing. You can give us feedback after if you heard something that you weren't, that didn't work out. So I'm going to stick to that this evening, and I'm going to turn it over to the clerk.
Communication has been received from Laurie Wilshire, President, Board of Aldermen, regarding calling special Board of Aldermen meeting on October 9th, 2025, relative to a discussion on unsheltered and downtown bathrooms.
There being no objection, I'll accept the communication, place it on file. Discussions and/or presentations. Mayor?
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Madam President. So I'm going to just introduce Liz Hanneman in a minute, but before that, just talk a little bit about how we've gotten here. The first, the main concern here is the effect of the homeless, unhoused population of people downtown. Not all of them, but some of them, particularly who misbehave at various times and interfere with, as you've already heard, the patrons downtown as well as the businesses. And we've heard in 2 listening sessions, first one organized by Alyssa O'Mara of the Great American Downtown with some city people, including myself, and then a follow-up with the Board of Aldermen. You've heard many of these concerns directly from our downtown business community. And of course, the downtown business community is essential to the city's success, and we want to make sure that everyone prospers and reach the appropriate balance between compassion for people who do not have the resources to enable them to have a sufficient place to live and the interests of the other citizens of the city. We have come up with a few ideas that we're just going to present. These aren't cast in stone or anything. We're just showing you a few alternatives, and Liz will give you some of the details. But before we get into that, I wanted to thank particularly some of our city employees who have worked very hard on the issue of unhoused homeless individuals over the course of quite a period of time. And of course, those include the Public Health Department. We have Bobby Bagley, Latanya Musielli, as well as our public health workers, who reach out every day and get to know people who are living outside, get to know their problems. And as we discussed, and particularly as Latanya detailed during the first meeting with the downtown businesses, they've had a lot of success in placing people, moving people along into housing and other situations which have improved their lives. But this is a finite number of people, and of course it has not certainly solved the problem. And when one person is placed into housing, then it seems that another person appears. Also, our police department, who over the years has, I think, done a great service in terms of helping the city to engage with individuals who are living on the street. First, and this includes the leadership of the department and the people who work directly, the officers who are directly involved. But first under the leadership of Deputy Joe Fay, and now, since his retirement, under the leadership of Deputy Brian Kinney. But to go slightly into what we're going to be presenting, I mean, we've talked about a few things, and Liz Hannum, Economic Development Director, will give you the details. But we've talked about, first in terms of trying to develop a broader cleanup of the downtown, using either either we need additional parks, public works employees, and/or contractors, and we need to work through the details of that. But that would be the concept. And we have used as a model there, or we've looked at what they're doing in the city of Manchester, where they have such a clean team, combined with potentially citizen ambassadors who would just help to negotiate issues downtown, help visitors and the like. And of course, the police department has begun a pilot program of having 2 officers on the street for 16 hours a day. This is not a cheap enterprise, but I believe it's had a definite impact, a positive impact. And so that's something we may want to consider continuing. In addition, the possibility of a downtown bathroom outdoors. There's some disagreement about that, and you might hear more details about that tonight. And those are some of the things that we're considering in terms of trying to make sure that the downtown is cleaner than it is now, including the river walks and the like. Commissioner Paul Shea has raised issues regarding the necessity or the desirability of cleaning up, Commissioner Paul Shea of the BPW, of cleaning up behind the library on a more regular basis. This would address that in other areas of the city where we find waste of various kinds, needles, even, sometimes medical waste and the like. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Liz Hannum to just present a few ideas. And what we're really looking for is your thoughts in terms, no decisions. We don't need any decisions now. We just like to show you that the ideas we're thinking that the city could pursue.
The mouse is what works best.
Liz? Okay.
Okay. Liz Hannum, Economic Development Director. I put together just a very quick presentation, and I wanted to just, again, reiterate that the scope of this conversation today, homelessness is a very complex issue with lots of different moving parts. And so these are just addressing these 3 particular things that we talked about at these meetings the last 2 weeks ago and the previous meeting. So the themes that came out of those 2 meetings were safety, cleanliness, and human waste. And we found specific potential solutions, or at least mitigation for some of these with these 3 programs. So safety, the increased police presence downtown from 7 to 11, and that pilot program began about 3 weeks ago. We're estimating it's costing around $30,000 a month. So if we want to continue that program, there will obviously be additional costs associated with that. The cleanliness, as the mayor mentioned, we are still working out some of those issues around what we need to contract out versus what we can do in-house. If we add anything to the in-house, we will also need to add staff. So we may end up with a contract and additional costs in-house. So I just want to kind of prepare you for that conversation. We have not made any decisions, or we don't have any recommendations for you at this time for that team. We are still going to be working on it, though, so we'll have more information as we kind of work through those issues. And then the big conversation that we're having is potentially public restrooms. So when we first started talking about this, I looked up some of the benefits of adding downtown restrooms, not just for our homelessness population or our transient population, but also for the entire community, the business community. Apparently there are lots of studies out there that say adding public restrooms actually increases linger time in our downtowns. So people will, spend additional hours in the community if they have a place where they can go to the restroom. We also have lots of events downtown, festivals, public health and sanitation, obviously. There was an entire study on how water quality changes when you add a public restroom, or improves when we add a public restroom, which I thought was really interesting. I'll share it with you if you want. But and then the accessibility issue, and then kind of the tourism visitor experience for our downtown as well. So those are just kind of 4 topic areas that we looked into. And then this particular unit is the type of unit that I would recommend for a permanent public restroom. I did some cost estimate. A real cost that I actually know is $185,000 for this unit to be delivered. It is steel, it is anti-graffiti. The hand washing station is on the outside of the unit. It is the pipes and things, so it would need additional cost for foundation work, sewer, water, and electrical, which we're looking at between $100,000 and $200,000 in addition to the actual unit cost. 3 to 4 month delivery time. But I would recommend this if we're going to go with a permanent solution because of the type of unit. So, for example, if we put it in a high visibility area with like 360-degree visibility, the PD can drive by and see if there's a person in there without even getting out of their vehicles. So it might lower labor costs in that area or effort. I think this particular unit was designed by the Portland, Oregon Fire, Police, and Parks departments with an engineer, and they are now all over the world. So they are working really well. But there's also going to be operational costs after that. So all of these options will have operational costs, and I'll go through what the cost estimates that I found, but any option is gonna need daily maintenance in order for it to be successful. So not only are we talking $300,000 to $400,000 in a single investment, but an annual cost as well. So in looking through these things, I talked with public health and with our police department, and there was concern over how it would actually be implemented and what effect it would bring, whether that would attract more people to downtown, what percentage of the issue is it mitigating? Is it 50% of the issue? Is it 100% of the issue? We know it's not going to be 100%, but is it 10%? but does it mitigate the issue enough to warrant the cost? And so I was thinking, you know, and have had several suggestions from even some of you to look into a lower cost, less permanent option. But first I'll go over kind of the locations that we were thinking. So this is just one of 7 locations that we figured, and I ran this particular one for the cost estimate for the foundation and utility work, and we think between 100 and 200 is sufficient, definitely sufficient for these locations. But I just wanted to give you an idea of the types of locations that we're looking for. And this would be for the permanent option, but it would also potentially be for some of our temporary options that we could start with. But visibility, again, we can't tuck the unit away anywhere because then it becomes a safety issue. It needs to be off of Main Street, but close by Main Street so that it's usable for or convenient for people. And we were looking specifically between City Hall and the Hunt Building, assuming that we could try to find somewhere in the middle there. And then the cost of connecting the utilities, if we go with the permanent option, was also a huge factor in where we were looking at for locations. So this is, I think, what we found as the primary location. We have 6 other ones that are potential, but this one has the most connection with sewer, water, electrical, so it would be the lowest cost to put something in permanently. It also has 360-degree visibility, so our police department or our fire department could drive through the parking lot or past on High Street and be able to see if there's feet in the unit. So, or if there's someone laying there and needs help, that option is one of the better options of the 7 locations that we figured. So here are some of the temporary solutions, or less permanent options. We would purchase one of these types of units. We do have to do an ADA accessible option, which puts the cost just over that 100,000. They were running between 90,000 and 125,000 plus shipping and all that. So I just estimated 100 to 150. We can go even higher if we want more units. But the Portland Loo option would just be that one unit for the 300 to 400,000, just so you can put it into like apples to apples comparison. So this would be getting us 3 units for about 1/3 the cost up front. The issues that I think we will see is they are closed, entirely enclosed. They do have heat and they have HVAC systems, so to keep the smell down, hopefully. But that also makes it less visible from the outside. You do have to kind of knock on the door to see if there's anyone in there. So that there's more labor cost associated with that variety. But there are no utility connections. And if we decide that it's not working specifically in the homelessness context, we could actually reuse this for other types of events or things like that. So for, if we have an event over at Greeley and we need additional restrooms, we could move it there. So that was one of the considerations that we took into account. So, and the availability, we could just purchase an existing unit, or if we wanted to build one, it would be about a 6-week delivery time. So it really depends on what type of unit, but I priced out just this one that you see in front of you. And again, operational costs, I wanted to make sure that was on every one of these. Or the other option that we put together was just to immediately buy ADA porta potties, essentially, and put them around. Again, the downside is visibility and safety issues that could come up within those. They're also not as easily cleanable. They do have to get pumped regularly. So it's more expensive in servicing. I guess the same would be for the mobile unit as well, but I didn't mention. But again, they're mobile, they're very inexpensive. You can buy a unit for $3,000, right? And we could have those available immediately. However, in order to be successful, you also need the operational cost, the daily maintenance. So here's the estimates that I got for annual operating costs. The more expensive unit up front is actually the least expensive to maintain because it's connected with sewer and water, and it's steel and basically indestructible, versus the particular unit that I looked at, the mobile unit, because there are 3 stalls, it actually is closer to almost $400 a day to maintain it. So we're looking at $145,000 basically a year in just cleaning costs after you pay for the unit. The same with the porta potty. So if we do 3 units, say, it's going to be at least $130,000 to clean on a daily basis. And so I wanted to, essentially, the cheaper option is going to be one of the more expensive options long-term versus the short-term. So just to give you an idea of what that looked like, and happy to kind of answer any questions at this point. But that was the basic research that was done.
Alderman Lopez?
It seems like a lot of the design focuses on being able to look in the porta potties and make sure there's somebody in there.
Yep.
Is there a reason we couldn't put like a remote motion sensor in there just to see if somebody doesn't come out in 20 minutes, maybe someone should check in?
That's certainly an option. Additional cost, I did not price out any kind of add-ons. So, yeah.
Alderman Jettie?
So the option 1 that you showed us, you talked about it having visibility for the police driving by, but what about privacy of the? I'm just thinking of.
Yeah.
Would women feel safe using that if you can look inside of it?
Let's see. You can't look inside. You can see feet. So.
What about at the top?
Yep, so the top is about 5 feet tall. So if you're standing up and you're above 5'5", then you'll be able to see ahead.
Somebody tall we're sitting down.
But essentially, it's from 2 feet to 5.5 feet is solid.
Right. So what about somebody looking in?
So if they get a ladder, they can definitely do that. But so I think that is always going to be an issue. But I don't know that they've had that. That wasn't on the website, so I don't know that they have had that issue. But it's always a possibility, right? So I think that would be a negative of this. But I think the slats go up rather than down, so that even if you do look in, you can't really see anything.
Okay.
So I think that probably was a consideration when they were designing it. I'm sorry, I don't have it more.
And what about heat in the wintertime? Are they?
Not heated. There are, in the $185,000, I priced out cold weather for the pipes specifically. But this unit is not heated. It is not intended to be a hangout spot. So it is open to rain and to snow and all of those things, so that it's a move along kind of place.
And so this is not, Nashua's not looking at a unique situation.
Right.
This problem exists all over the country, all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, what works best? All these other places have tried all these things. What works the best?
If we're looking at doing a restroom, I think my recommendation is a permanent option. And this particular unit seems to solve not only a kind of public health issue, but also our issue with potential criminal activity or, you know, safety issues. So this particular unit, and working with public health, they agree. They recommended this as well. We kind of independently both found this. So I would recommend this particular type of unit. They've only been around about 5 or 6 years, maybe longer, maybe around 10 years. But they are now all over the world because they are successful. So I would recommend this if we're going to go with a permanent option.
Okay, and
Alderman Jettie.
so, I've never been there, and I don't really know, but I hear that, there are some Asian cities that are known for their cleanliness, like, I think Singapore is one of them. What do they do there?
They do closed units that self-clean usually. And I looked at those options, and they're a little bit more expensive than this, but not by much. They would still have the foundational work and utility work and all those things. The reason I would recommend this over others is because self-cleaning has to be entirely enclosed so that the water doesn't go everywhere when they are cleaning. And so I think that this particular visibility issue, especially when, PD or fire can actually see people, if they're laying on the ground, they can see that from their vehicles. And so that was why I recommended this over a self-cleaning unit. But that still is an option if that's something that you would like more information on.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. These are actually very great. I've used them when I traveled to the West Coast. Astoria was the last I used about a month ago. And you can't see in, you can see people's feet and such, just as described. And quite frankly, it's more for people who are downtown, not just homeless, because it was families lined up to use the bathroom. And it was just next to the downtown because there was no public restrooms. And if you've been to Astoria, the downtown is a little bit like ours, but more famous because of the Goonies. Well, we have The Office, I guess. But no, I think this is great. I've used them many, many times. I've never found any needles, et cetera, when using them when they're maintained by the city that I'm in.
I did also price out the sharps containers and things to put in there specifically.
Great.
So,
and I would definitely caution about using Portland, Oregon as an example. They're in a unique predicament in general. I wouldn't use a bathroom in certain parts of Portland. I don't think the same could be said for Nashua.
right.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I like the idea of this. I also like the idea of the self-cleaning. I was in San Francisco and they had the self-cleaning models, and they were good. And there were homeless people that were using it, but I think it gave the public a better feeling that it was always going to be clean. And if you're in there too long, it cleans. So
Yeah. Yeah.
no one wants to stay in there too long.
I think
That's a deterrent.
I did see that when I was looking through things.
Yeah.
Is they have fixed that issue. So
That was a problem when I was
Yeah.
there.
Yep.
I was a little anxious at that time,
Yeah.
so it's like, do what you got to do and get out.
Yep.
Anyways, but I just wanted to make that comment. But I guess my question is, have we looked at what other communities are doing? There was commentary in the Nashua Inklink, and that was one of the things she said, was that Nashua did not have this unique problem as far as homeless are concerned. It was throughout the state, New England, the country, and so on. And I thought it was a very good question to pose. What is Massachusetts communities doing? What are Vermont communities doing? What are other, not just Manchester, but what are other communities? Have we looked to see what they've done, if anything, that maybe instead of reinventing the wheel, as was posed,
Yeah.
that we would try to take examples, good and bad, what didn't work and what did work?
Yeah, I think that's a much larger conversation too than just about restrooms. I think there are 1,500 communities that are using this particular unit now. And so they are working in other communities. Some, as in Portland, they don't maintain them very well. And so that has not been successful. So that's why I'm like, every day, we need to maintain them every single day. But there's multi-pronged approach, and I think when we see people, or when we see communities put restrooms in, there's usually a benefit. I know, talking with our police department, they are worried that it's going to attract more people to downtown, and so we have to weigh that potential with the potential of solving, or mitigating rather, our human waste issue. So I think, and I think PD's here if we want to hear from them too about how they feel it might work or not work. But I do think for this particular issue that it could help. But that's why I also priced out some of those temporary options to kind of pilot the idea, see if it's successful, because we don't really know how our population will work, or will react to this particular thing. So other communities haven't seen a ton of people moving towards their public restrooms if they maintain them. If they don't maintain them, they are not successful, and they can cause more issues than they solve, which is, again, that operating cost is going to be really important. So I think if we maintain them, we might not see the issues that are of concern the most, but we really don't know at this point how our specific population is going to react to this. So if that is a concern, then we would probably I would recommend moving to the temporary option and having a pilot program. It would be an expensive pilot program at nearly half the cost of a permanent option, plus 1 year of operation would cover the cost of a permanent solution. But that might allow us time to figure out how our population is actually reacting and how they're using it, and if it's mitigating a specific issue or causing more issues. So I think there are lots of examples of really good public restrooms and really bad ones. So I have looked at lots of other communities in this.
Thank you. I guess my concern about some of the temporary ones that don't have plumbing per se is the odor and so on. We already have some complaints with sewer smells at times through the downtown area. I don't want to add to that. And that's my concern. And we've also had, if I'm not mistaken, some issues with some of the porta potties of firecrackers and so on and so forth, and I don't want to encourage that. But my concern about this particular one being open, while, yeah, we don't linger, you go in, you do what you have to do, but we talked about like snow and things like that. What kind of a safety hazard does that become with people going in there and slippery floors, et cetera? Was that part of the maintenance? And
So it's put on a concrete pad.
Okay.
So you do a brush finish on the concrete pad so that it's anti-slip.
Okay.
So I think that concern, I think we might not need to worry about that slipping piece. But they're in lots of places right now that do have fairly rough winters.
Okay.
And so I can do more research on how they're dealing with that, but I didn't see anything that stood out as an issue during our winter timeframe.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President.
Alderman Senate?
Thank you, Madam President. I apologize if I'm retreading old material here. I was unable to make the meeting at the library. I did listen in. I wanted to clarify something, though, and I may be going into the dregs of my memory here, growing up in Nashua a little bit, but it's my understanding on the north side of this building, there's at least one, if not two, restrooms with external access.
Yes.
Are those operational?
They are, yep. So currently they are open when City Hall is open, so till 5 p.m. I know there's a conversation potentially next week about opening them for longer, but that would be an operational cost added as well. The reason I would say that these might not solve or even mitigate the issue is they're not easily visible. They're in the basement of City Hall. That we would need signage to put out, because they're not visible from anywhere except the alley on the backside. So we would need to put significant thought and effort into making them the solution, kind of. So it is an option, and I think we are going to try to add additional hours. But even if we keep them open till 10 p.m., that still leaves 10 hours of the day that there are no public restrooms. So that was my one concern, that this may not, we might add additional time for the existing bathrooms, but I don't think it's going to solve very much of the problem unless there's significant investment in them.
No, and I think you had alluded to that at the top of the conversation, where, like, we're considering the costs of the various options in front of us, and not one of these is going to resolve the issue.
Right.
I mean, I'm looking at what I think is probably, if I'm hearing the room right, the most popular or attractive or appealing option right now. But I'm also hearing, you had said you had identified 6 potential locations. Does that go hand in glove with contemplating the purchase of 6 units?
No.
Because that's a huge cost.
No, so I identified 6 potential locations for 1 unit. but in order to keep the utility connection costs low, I wanted to give us options. So the plan is just the 1 unit if we do the permanent option, unless you want to allocate additional funding. That's an option as well, but it is an expensive endeavor. So I just priced out 1 with 6 potential locations, and then we would, like, if one location that's at the High Street one that I mentioned, if that location is too expensive to connect utilities to, then we have other options to go to, like kind of a list of preferences. But I would not suggest doing multiples unless you would like to spend a lot more money.
Sure, yeah. And
Yeah.
I guess my final thought is that I see it as 2 sides of the same coin. Is, the 2 that we have down here on the north side of the building now, they're set in the alley, they're not as visible. 1 visible, centrally located versus 2 not necessarily visible and centrally located. I don't know if there's a bathroom engineer, but I don't.
Yeah,
I
sure
don't necessarily see either of them having one great advantage over the other, I guess, is where I'm at right now.
I would say the one great advantage of this permanent option versus the ones downstairs is the visibility issue. So especially City Hall, if PD wants to check that, they have to go park somewhere and walk over versus just driving by. And so I think the likelihood of catching somebody that's having an issue or all of those things goes up tremendously if it's visible. So I think risk-wise, safety-wise, I think this is a much better option. But again, that we have to weigh the expenses and the potential, what is the return on investment? We don't really know. So that's a issue for us to weigh at this point.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. So my question was a little bit similar to the previous speaker, but I was wondering if, I know you are trying to put costs in front of us, but did you consider like the volume of which we might need? Because I was thinking the same thing. 1, okay, but there was also, I think you said 6 for porta potties. So did you think about that, and what would honestly be the amount that you would recommend?
If we had the ideal scenario and money was no object, I would say we would we should do at least 3 in different locations, north, south, and middle of downtown, so that it's easily accessible from where people are hanging out. So that would be my recommendation, but you're looking at almost $1 million with 3 of them, so.
Sure. If I could follow up.
Yes.
Can we go back to the handicap accessibility piece of that?
Yeah.
Because I appreciated that these were handicap accessible.
Oh.
But in terms of the current public bathrooms, how many of them are handicap accessible?
There are stairs into them, so I
There's
don't
stairs in
think.
in City Hall, there's
Yeah.
stairs at the public library.
The library
There's
does
one.
have an elevator, but it is very small, and I don't even know, I know that the library has had a lot of issues with the ADA accessibility of their bathrooms, even with the elevator access, so I don't think that they have felt comfortable with their, so I think that, and talking about renovating the library, that was a major issue that they wanted to address, was accessibility of the bathrooms. So I don't think that there really is an option at this point. I don't think we have something that is accessible in a meaningful way.
Thank you.
Next, I have Alderman Dowd.
Okay, being a professional logistician, I have some questions about the support costs. Since these have lights, I assume you included the electricity hookup.
Yep.
Okay. The lights that are in there, are the covers non-breakable, or they are?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. And external lighting, because I think these would need external lights outside to
Yep.
make them safe?
Yeah, there's lighting, if I go back here, at least for this permanent option, there's lighting all throughout in the inside of it, as well as around the outside that shines down. So I would say, though, that if we pick a location that doesn't have a well-lit area, that would be an additional cost that we did not put into this. So that might be a
I'm
concern.
thinking like the equivalent of street lights, because you want the whole area lit up.
Right.
Okay, and I assume you also included when the bulbs wear out, the bulb costs.
Actually, in terms of the operational cost, I just priced out the daily cleaning and the kind of emptying regularly. I did not look at like long-term, like if a car runs into it and a panel has to be replaced. Luckily, the Portland Loo option is a modular, so you wouldn't have to replace the whole thing, you would just replace a panel. But I did not cost that out.
Having done a lot of work with schools lately with bollards, you probably want to have bollards around this so somebody can't hit it with a car.
Yeah, and we did that foundational utility connection, we did put enough in that 100 to 200,000 if we need bollards, that
Okay,
that
they're
would
not
fit into that cost.
expensive. And are the seats solid, or, so somebody can't smash them and break them, because, okay.
No, the seat
And-
is also steel.
And operational costs would be toilet paper, and is it set up so somebody can't steal the rolls? Because that will happen in a heartbeat.
Yep.
And you know, if you have any history of them clogging for any reason, you might want to find that out. Has
Yeah,
it become a problem?
don't
And do they auto flush?
I think they might.
That would be probably pretty good if they were.
Yeah. I can do more.
Those are just some of the things to think about,
research.
because
Yep.
when I start thinking about supportive things, you know,
Yep.
I get into the nitty-gritty of what it really takes to support an item, so that would be my concern on all the different options.
Okay.
Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Madam President. So, looking at this, I mean, the expensive unit looks great. I mean, it looks like it'd be great for the downtown, and not necessarily for the homeless, but just in general, right? So, my concern is that it doesn't solve our problem, which we know, right? When you look at, and I don't want to do the temporary options, because I've coached enough baseball in the city to be near porta potties, you know, behind Holman, and you smell them the whole game. And I've seen at least 2 of them burned to the ground. So I know that porta potties is definitely not an option, in my opinion anyway, and it would be a very temporary one. But I don't know if this solves the problem. For the amount of money we have up there, the almost 400,000, that can do a lot of good work for the people that need it in the city. So I look at that and I'm like, bathroom or money going toward, not that we necessarily have that as an option either, because we probably just wouldn't spend the money. But, so my question is, when you look at these other cities and you see this kind of unit, is it just one unit? And that's what you're basing it on? Or do they have 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6 units? And I want to know what one city that only has 1 unit, how does that take care of whatever issues they may have?
So I did look at, the majority of the communities that I looked at just did 1 unit, or they did 2 units next to each other. Those were kind of the most common that I saw in, but they would do 1 downtown and 1 in a park, and, you know, so they would put a bunch of them out, but they wouldn't be close together. So I think that is pretty common, is just to do 1 or 2 units, and then have them pretty far apart. Yeah, so I think that's pretty common.
Follow up, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So budget's been done. So if we're looking to say we had the legislation today and we're going, yep, we're going to do it. Where's that money coming out of? Is it a separate appropriation outside of the current budget, or are we pulling it from some other department? And what is the trade-off? Like, what are we trading off there?
We've only had preliminary conversations about this, so we don't have any great recommendations yet, but I think that this would need to be separate from our operational budget. We've looked at maybe using surplus when it comes up, but that's going to be a decision for you guys. So I don't have any recommendations there yet, but I'm working on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. Just basically jotting down some numbers from your costs. Each unit would be cost around $385,000 by the time we purchase the unit at $185,000, and $200,000 for installation. So it basically comes up to $385,000. If we did the concrete work at $150,000, it'd be $335,000. So, you know, it's...
So all of the concrete work is included in that 100 to 200.
So it is, so the concrete work is included, right, in the 200?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. If I
Okay,
gave you
sorry.
a discount of,
Yeah.
50,000, so anyways. In looking at it, I compliment you on your work on this. You did it very well thought. I really like the Portland Loo. In my career as a firefighter, one of the highlights of my career is to have the plastic porta potties on fire. We always look forward to them, you know. So they just don't last. Even though when I worked construction, you know, I used to hide for half a day in one when it was too cold out, but it wasn't a pleasant experience. But it would not work. And something that's got to work with this particular group of people, and I don't mean to sound unkind or anything. Something has to be solid in nature with it, you know. You bring up the point, is it self-flushing? Well, that's just requesting the demand for a valve that does that when you spec it out, you know, and you go into Burger King and you have self-flushing facilities, and that's just a spec on a valve, you know. But I think you got my vote 100%, and, you know, looking at it, you know, we could try just one as the test kitchen, so to speak, and see how it goes, you know. And at almost $400,000, it's a hell of an experiment, I admit. But, you know, we'll know, have a better idea how to handle it as we get into the future. And then you haven't really discussed, where the money comes from, surplus and everything, but nobody has mentioned maybe the TIF fund or something like that, And I don't know if that's available, because where it is benefiting the downtown, I hate to take any money from any of the TIF, because it goes for a specific reason there. But it could help out in the initial costs. I don't know. It's something that can be debated. But when it comes to a vote, the Portland Loo is the one for me,
Just to
Yeah,
respond to the
please.
TIF option, unfortunately, any of the locations we looked at were not inside the boundaries of the TIF, and so we cannot use that source of funding there.
But the current one you're giving the,
Unless it's, actually, one location, we did have the library, was
Right.
inside the TIF, sorry.
no, but High Street isn't in that, unfortunately so then.
No. Actually, I didn't look to see if it was in the School Street TIF. It's not in the Riverfront TIF, but I will do more research to see if it's in
But-
the
I
School Street.
don't think I think where you're looking on High Street, it is not.
not,
I don't
yeah.
think so.
don't
It's
think it
too
is.
bad. I just wonder if that could
Yeah,
help defray some of the costs, but
I'll confirm.
I'm not saying I always come up with really neat ideas, but I'm just trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, no, but I think this is definitely prudent, you know what I mean? Needs to be done. The good people in the audience want it done, and I think we could probably swallow the 400, rounding up to the $400,000 with it,
Yeah, and I did chat with Harvey a little bit, just to kind of have a basic understanding of what those utility connections would be. And that location that I showed them at High Street, they did say that we were much closer to 100 than 200 in that location. But they didn't want to commit to that. So we stuck with a much larger conservative range, so.
One follow-up, if I may. In looking, I have seen pending legislation for opening up City Hall bathrooms, and like you mentioned, perhaps extenuating the hours. But in my experience, they're hidden, they're not viewed by the police. I don't want to hire full-time matrons or a gentleman's gentleman to be in the men's room. I do not want to put any cameras in any, restroom facility. And I'm very concerned. I like this place. It's ancient, it's old, it's built in the 30s, but I hate to see it burn down because unsupervised. I mean, the place is heated. It's nice and warm in the winter. I don't think people are just going to go to the bathroom, in my opinion, and then evacuate a warm place to go out in 2-degree weather. They might just be there all night. So I'm open-minded, but very, very cautiously concerned with that. Thank you.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you, Madam President. So my concern with the permanent one, the first option, the Portland Loo, is the cost of this, and we're not sure what the actual benefit is going to be. Can you actually go back? Do you mind go back to the
benefits?
page?
Yeah,
No, to the page with the costs?
sure. The operational costs?
Yes.
There we go.
So you mentioned that the bathroom that's in City Hall right now is open 8 hours a day, correct? So that's assuming that there's somebody maintaining it for 8 hours right now. If I were to take that 200, there's 2 of them, so if I was to take that 240 a day, multiply that by 365, and then divide that by 3, multiply that by 2, I've got $58,000 as a cost to run the City Hall bathrooms based on your figures if we were to open them up 24 hours a day. That sound right?
Yeah, and actually, yeah, probably about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to me, I think the best solution, even though they're not, I understand that they're not ADA compliant. But we need to see what the use is going to be on these bathrooms, right? We need to see, like, are they going to be used if we tell people that there is indeed a bathroom that can be accessed like we want it to be? To me, the operational cost to add to what we're already doing in a bathroom that already exists, that we don't have to build out, makes sense to do that as an initial step for a year. And then we can evaluate how successful that was, and then determine whether or not it makes sense to move forward with the Portland Loo somewhere else. That's just my opinion on this. I think we have a lot of expenditures that we have to do. We have to, I'm sure that we want to fund the police, that pilot program, and that's going to cost a lot of money to do. I think that that's an important piece that's probably more important than this. You know, there's other tasks that are going to need to be done as well, including cleaning up the parks, cleaning up some of these camps. So I think if it were me, I would be spending the money opening up the City Hall bathroom, giving that a test. We could put we can put a motion sensor in there, as one of the aldermen suggested. And, you know, that will give us the ability to do the other things that we also want to do, because we do have a finite amount of money, and we can't ask the taxpayers to do everything that we want to do, but we might be able to get 85% of it if we can cut costs in some other areas. So I'm not saying that the idea is a bad idea to get one of these eventually, but I think we need to establish a use case for that, and I think we have the perfect opportunity to do it because we already have a bathroom that exists.
Alderman Govea.
Thank you, Madam President. Would it be appropriate to see what the thoughts are of the PD and fire? I see they're both out there tonight.
Yeah, I thought we would get through our discussion and then
Perfect.
invite them to answer
All right,
questions.
I'm all set then, thank you.
Okay. Alderwoman Kelly's next.
You might also tell me to hold. So my comment here is along the lines of some of the discussion here. It's a lot of money for a bathroom. I think that you pose a great argument for not only does it help with economic vitality, et cetera, but it is a lot of money for a bathroom. And if we talk about the reason we're here, I don't think that a bathroom is going to fix the overall problem. So where is that money? And honestly, I want to hear from city staff, what's the solution? And maybe we're not all going to solve homelessness as you started, but you guys have the expertise and policy background, and there are people in this room who are practitioners in this. And I think you were asked to price out bathrooms, and that's great, but is that actually the solution that we need to meet what's happening in our community right now?
If I can just respond, I think we do have a lot of experts in kind of a larger conversation on homelessness, and I am not the person to answer that. But I do think that if we would like to solve the human waste issue, that we need to look at an option. And that's, I think it's an imminent issue that people are dealing with on a daily basis right now. So that is my only recommendation, is to even if it mitigates 50% of the problem, that's still 50% of the problem that's mitigated, right? So again, we don't know what the actual numbers are, but that's my, no one thinks a bathroom is going to solve homelessness. So
just checking.
Just want
Just
to
making
say
sure.
that. Yeah.
Okay. The 58,000.
Can I get into the 58? I don't see how that works, in the sense that can I just put forward
Yeah.
some numbers and have you respond? You know, there are 180, if we're doing this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there are 184 hours a week. Times 20 is $3,680 a week times 52. I mean, we're looking at a couple $100,000. If you could have one person do both men and women, and that might be an issue as well. So I just want to be thinking about the correct numbers, that's all.
May I respond?
Alderman Clemmons.
Yeah, according to that right there, where you look at the mobile trailer with 2 stalls and 1 ADA, it says $120 a day times 2 units equals $240 a day. There's 365 days in the year. So you multiply 240 times 365, you get $87,600. That's how much it would cost, according to this estimate, to clean 2 bathrooms. Now, if you divide that by 3, if you divide that answer by 3, you get $29,200. If you multiply that by 2, you get $58,400, because you're assuming that the bathroom that's open for 8 hours now is already being cleaned by somebody. So the additional cost would be, according to this estimate, $58,400.
Well, I think the difference might be in our assumptions. I mean,
Yeah.
because these things are downstairs, and they're, you know, you got to have someone go down there to even look to see if there's someone there. And so if you wanted to maintain, it's not just the cleaning, it's the monitoring. And you would need, I mean, if you don't have someone on duty at all times, someone could, you know, OD in there at midnight, and no one would find them till 8 in the morning or whatever. So the advantage, if you wanted to do the bathrooms, I'm just trying to get the analysis. The advantage is you can see them from the outside. You don't have to always have someone there all the time. That's it for me, though.
Alderman Clemmons, do you want to
Can I just respond to that? So the mobile trailer and the 2 stalls with the ADA stall, if I remember correctly from the presentation here, were closed. They were closed units, meaning that you could not see people from the outside. So that would be the same as our city hall bathrooms as well. And so, again, if we want to debate whether or not the cost estimate up there is correct, we could do that. But if it's incorrect, then I would say we need to go back to the drawing board. But I think that if it is correct, which I think, even if it was the full amount, even if it was $87,000, you're still talking about probably an additional staff member, because really you could probably cut that down with the staff that works during the day now. My point is, it's already being maintained to a degree. We're talking about adding an extra 16 hours during the day when it would have to be additionally maintained. And again, you can come up with systems to try to see who is in there through, you can have a camera on the outside of the bathroom, certainly, and you can also have motion sensors and things like that on the inside. So I think to me, it's our most viable choice.
Okay, next we have Alderman Lopez.
So I guess I would just point out that we lost our last city hall because of people who were trying to stay overnight that got cold. So to my colleague's point, we don't necessarily want to put a situation where people are unmonitored in there. It is also not ADA compliant, so that doesn't cover the whole population that might be outside. And I don't just mean people who might be in wheelchairs. I mean people who might have walkers, of which there are plenty. I think we probably are fighting very hard over whether we want to add a public amenity. If we start making this about trying to end homelessness with bathrooms, yeah, the math doesn't add up. But if we make this about, can the people of Nashua go to the bathroom when they need to downtown, it seems much more straightforward. I think adding bathrooms downtown is something that was overdue. I think as far as the downtown businesses are concerned, placing that responsibility on them, particularly because we closed these ones for longer than they necessarily needed to be, was a problem. And then when people had no solutions and started to go to the bathroom, in different places, that became extremely odious. So I think the least we can do is acknowledge that people are going to have to go to the bathroom. And when we bring people downtown, because we want the economic activity, it makes sense for anybody to have at least a place they can go to the bathroom. And if it's a place that is, cost effective to maintain, if it's a place that can be easily managed or supervised, those are just better. One thing that we have to consider is if people are going down into the basement bathrooms, those are strangers that might be going to the bathroom together, and we don't always know what they're going to do with each other. There might be arguments, fights, escalations, unusual behavior. So I do think we need to manage, supervision of it. I think motion sensors is a possibility, particularly for an outdoor bathroom. An enclosed space, though, I don't know if that's enough. And I don't think we should be pointing any blink cameras or anything inside. And if you look at what's going on outside there, we can watch who's going in and out, but there has to be somebody still monitoring that. So my opinion, personally, is I'm leaning towards the Portland Loos. I did want to ask Director Hannum, though, because the numbers for the foundation and placement and all that are similar to what we talked about at Human Affairs a couple of months ago about for portable classrooms, and whether we could use those as, drop-in state centers or that kind of stuff. Was that contemplated or discussed?
Meaning using those instead of a permanent option? We have not discussed that, no. So I think that was a discussion that was had, but I didn't incorporate that into the recommendations here. But the $100,000 for the mobile unit that I mentioned is about the same type. So I think the same issues that with the temporary option would also be an issue with the mobile classroom option. But again, those are our options on the table. I think.
Right, and I don't expect to throw a whole new thing in there. I don't even know if the mobile classroom would fit where you were looking. But I just wanted to bring that up because the Public Health Department, which I hope we're going to be hearing from later, has brought up the fact that they need a welcoming center, which is a place where people can go to, be found, and engaged proactively. And we have buildings that we own that we haven't been able to make any kind of use of. So where people are looking for more permanent solutions, we should be looking at how to support public health outreach in pursuing those options. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be adding a bathroom downtown, because people are still going to need to go to the bathroom, whether they're homeless, whether they live downtown, or whether they're there for the stroll, they're still going to need to go to the bathroom.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes. I hate to put practicality back in the equation, but again, my background points that out. So if we do the Portland Loos, it's 3 to 5 months procurement time. So, and also we would have to go out with an RFP for the foundations and the infrastructure work. That means the development time for RFPs and bid process, it's probably 4 to 6 weeks at best. If we have the 3 to 5 month lead time, we're talking about February to April before those arrive. The question is, can you do the foundation and infrastructure during the winter? Or do you have to wait? If you have to wait till like April when they come in, now you're talking May to June before these are open. We're probably going to need a short-term solution as well as a long-term solution. We're like 6 months out even if we go with that Portland Loo. So the question is, is City Hall the option in the short term? Because I'm not sure we have many other options. Somebody just brought up the portables. The portables that we were using in school are now sitting in Elm Street. Right where they're sitting, all of the infrastructure is under the ground right now. And hookup wouldn't be that extreme, but that's a short-term solution, because I don't know when we're going to start working the Elm Street project. It's not imminent, that's for sure. And the other thing that I pointed out to somebody today, we're using the Elm Street cafeteria as a warming shelter this winter. Why can't we use the 2 gyms that are there? as well. You know, that would provide for a lot more people, probably more comfort. We'd have to have volunteers to man them, but, so there's a lot of things that, you have to look at this short-term, long-term. And, you know, even if we decided tonight, which we're not, on the Portland Loos, it's gonna take 6 months to get the funding approved, and then the order process, so we're looking at next summer at best to have these usable. So what do we do in the short term?
I think, if I could just answer that, we did kind of go through a timeline potentially, and if we, from the day that we order the Portland Loos, if that's how we go, we are looking at probably 4 to 5 months from there. So, just to give you an idea. So, that's why I put the 3 to 4 months of order time.
Alderman Sullivan.
Yes. Thank you. I wanted to find out from you, Director Hannum. I think you alluded to it, but I know that we had just, my colleague had mentioned public amenity. I mean, we're basically here to talk about the problem that we're trying to solve is the human waste problem downtown. Does one bathroom, regardless of the option that we choose, solve that problem?
No. The short answer is no. We will mitigate the problem, hopefully, but we don't really know how much mitigation. Other communities have seen varying levels of success. The majority of them that maintain them are seeing higher success rates. But I can guarantee we are not solving 100% of the human waste problem, because we still have mental health issues. And, you know, if we're only doing one and they're down by the library, they may not be willing to come all the way up. So I can guarantee that it's not solving 100% of the problem. But is it solving 80% or 50%? We don't know yet.
Thank you. And when you look at maintenance for these, you know, if I'm downtown, we get it, and I notice that it's, you know, it needs to be cleaned up. Who's responsible for that? What department, you know, do we call on the carpet and say, you gotta keep these clean?
We have not figured out the logistics of it. We've talked about either contracting out as part of the clean team potentially. If we go with a clean team, they would likely be in charge of also cleaning these. So there might be some cost savings there between the two options. But we haven't figured that out yet for operational process.
Okay, all set, thanks.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam President. So Alderman Sullivan took a little bit of my thunder there, but he's exactly right. The problem we're solving with this is the human waste. It's not homelessness. It's not going to solve homelessness. So I don't like the cost of this right now. I really don't. And believe me, I support this issue. I just don't like the cost. I'd rather see it set up for the budget next year, because then it's baked into the budget, right? If we're going to go that route, because I don't think one's going to do much, to be honest. I think the idea of using City Hall is not good, and the reason why I say that is because exactly, it's ADA. It's not, a lot of the people that are on the streets do have trouble walking, and now we're going to put them on stairs. Like, it's out of sight. How are they going to know that it's open? And if it's not open all night, do we think that people are causing this trouble at noontime? No, it's usually overnight when nobody can see them, and people are coming to their business in the morning, and that's when they're finding the waste. So I don't think City Hall is going to be the issue. I wish it was. I wish it was, you know, above ground and you could get into it easily and there was signage and people knew about it. That would be great. I just don't think that's the way that City Hall's set up. And I think there are some outside costs there of City Hall that we haven't talked about or aren't baked in. If we're buying motion sensors or cameras on the outside or whatnot, I don't think that's enough, because now the police cost them more because they got to like you said, get out of the car and go in. So I don't know what the answer is right now. I mean, I think we have to find something to do temporarily. You know, I would try City Hall temporarily, I guess. I just don't think it's going to mitigate the problem. And one of these I don't think is going to mitigate the problem. But if, you know, is 25% or 40% worth the cost? I don't know. So I don't know. But I'm just worried about this cost now, where we could use that to open the warming station another month. Because you know what? It's cold right now. It's already cold. Tonight is cold, and we're not opening the warming station till December. Well, wouldn't some of this money open it for another month, another couple of weeks, something? Because I know November is going to be cold if October is already getting cold. So that's how I look at the money. I'm trying to think of the money here. So.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. Both my colleagues brought up a similar thing about, one, solving the problem. And I think that when we had the meeting with the downtown community, that was brought up. Are those that need to use it going to always go to that one location, or are they just going to go where it's convenient? So I agree with everybody about that this is a big cost, but I think we need to do something. While I do like the idea of the using City Hall, I have concerns of what can happen in there unmonitored. And I'm not necessarily afraid that someone's going to burn down City Hall, but I am afraid that in the morning we could find something we don't want to find, or that it becomes a nice warming station, and so on. So I do have those concerns. I also have concerns about the length of time to get this, and that just pushes the problem out with no solution. So keeping that in mind, has there been any consideration about what we're going to do in the meantime? Would we consider opening up City Hall as a temporary, longer, you know, and I guess this goes to the mayor as much as you, during that 3 to 5 months? Because I think you know, when I look at the downtown community, whether it's for those that want to help the homeless or for those that have businesses, they're looking for us to do something as soon as possible. We still have the same issue that the City Hall bathroom is still just one location. And as someone who's maybe up towards Library Hill going to actually walk all the way down there, or they're just going to go where it's convenient behind something, I can't answer that. But I think we need to do something now, even if it's temporary. I would say probably those in the downtown business or people who frequent downtown are going to say, spend that money, I'd rather see the money. And I'm sure there are those that are saying, well, if you didn't waste the money on the Performing Arts Center, we could have 3 of these. So, but that is gone and past. So the main thing is I think we need to do something yesterday. So I'd like to see a plan that shows, even if we did go with the Portland News, which I don't have a problem with, but even if we go that, what is going to be the in-between time? I really want to see what are we doing in between. And I do, Madam President, if it's okay, I do have one question. I just have to find it here. Let's see. The City Hall bathrooms that we have now, we talked about extending the length to 10 p.m. Is that going to include weekends?
No.
No. So it's only going to be Monday through Friday, no holidays, maybe 7 to 10 or 8 to 10? Is that what it's going to be?
So it'll be 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., which is when we have staff here.
Right.
Our maintenance staff, it works till 10 p.m. It would be closed from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. and on weekends, because there is no one here to check in on it. I think, and we haven't coordinated yet, but the risk department has been pricing out. I think the mayor's conversation versus the kind of math that we did here, I think they're two different programs that we were talking about. So just the cleaning, this is just cleaning, this is not monitoring. I think our risk department, if I remember correctly, they were really concerned about people having issues on city property when City Hall is closed and there's no one to check on them for potentially 3 days, right? If it happens on Friday night and no one comes in until Monday. I think that that is the concern, and that's, I think, where the mayor's budget numbers come in, is we would probably either hire an outside firm that would come in and check regularly, or I know the risk department has been starting to look into those numbers, so I'll defer to them as we kind of flesh out these ideas, but that is a concern.
If I just made one more comment. I truly think that even if we have a temporary measure, if we decided to go with the Portland, even if we have a temporary measure, we have to look at the handicap accessible. I do, that is a big concern. And whether it be the homeless so that they can use it, or if it's just residents and visitors and so on. So I think that's always been my problem. Those are dark, steep steps, and I remember using them all the time. Very large bathrooms with multiple stalls, but I'm concerned about those that can't get in there. So.
Yeah, and I was also concerned with that. So that the Portland Loo is accessible, and I only looked at options in the temporary in accessibility. So like the mobile trailer has 2 regular stalls with stairs in it, and then there's like a ramp to go into the side. So I was very concerned about the accessibility issue. So if you look, this is the ADA unit, and then there's 2 on the side here. So it comes with all of the ramps and things like that. So I didn't look at options that didn't have an accessibility option. So there are other options that are in the $60,000 to $80,000 range, but they did not have accessible units. So I couldn't put it on here as a recommendation.
Just one more. It just hit me as you said this. These are the cost estimates of purchasing and setting it up and so on. Are there any cost estimates of a rental for 6 months, or rather than is it less, or is it going to, in the end up being more?
It ends up being more expensive monthly, but if we're only doing it for 3 or 4 months, or 6 months even, then it would be less expensive than purchasing. But if we're also purchasing, right, then we've used a lot of money. So I think I can put together some numbers for you too on rentals, but it was a lot more expensive than just purchasing the unit.
Okay, thank you.
So I have 5 more speakers from within here, but I'm wondering if we should move on to maybe public health or the police department or someone else that we might have questions for. So if you would yield to me. And
Madam President, I would like to make that motion because I think that will give us more
It's just presiding.
food for thought on this particular matter, that we should invite certain people. So do you need a motion on that, or?
Need a motion.
Okay, thank you.
You're going to hang around though, right,
Yes,
Dr. Hannah?
I'll cede the floor, but.
Okay. So if I could invite either public health or the police department, we'd like to maybe hear from you. It's the dynamic duo.
Hi, LaTanya Musioli, Housing Services Officer.
Good evening, Bobby Bagley, Director for the Division of Public Health and Community Services.
I did just want to follow up on Director Hannum's presentation, just to give you guys some information. Last year, Public Health actually piloted a program in which our community health workers, myself and Director Bagley, worked extended days to keep the City Hall public restrooms open later. So these were open until 8 p.m. on days that the City Hall was open. And this was prompted because there had been a porta potty over at St. Pat's Church. Just because of significant misuse of that porta potty and concerns with safety, it was removed. So that was the primary public restroom downtown for our unhoused population. When supporting folks with the City Hall public restrooms, we did find folks sheltering in the bathroom. They're very large, so I don't know if some of you have been down there. There's multiple stalls. They're huge. So we've found people down there with blankets. We found people sheltering. We found people using substances. We actually had an overdose, and thankfully one of our maintenance staff was able to respond and provide life-saving measures through Narcan use for one of those individuals. Again, and Director Bagley can correct me if I'm wrong, but typically when someone has an overdose, you only have a short window of time to reverse it. It's about 15 minutes or so. So again, this would require frequent monitoring and checking to make sure that folks are safe if they are using the public restrooms, because we know that not all folks that will be using these will be using them to just use the bathroom. So I did want to put that out there. It was something that we did trial last year. And folks did use it. So we would check the restrooms probably around 6:30-ish. We would do outreach on Main Street, come back and check the restrooms again, closer to the time that they were closing. And then maintenance staff would go in there and check as well.
I think it's a lot to ask of our maintenance staff to be administering Narcan on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So does anyone have questions for public health? Alderwoman Kelly?
Thank you. One of the things that was brought up by an alderman was potentially the Elm Street bathrooms. Interested in sort of what has been happening at the warming station and if that would be a potential solution.
I think Director Bagley and myself have presented to this board multiple times the need for a drop-in resource center. We've submitted 2 capital improvement project requests for a resource center for that exact reason. I think it addresses multiple concerns that the community has. One, a lot of folks hanging out downtown that may be unhoused, exhibiting mental health issues, substance use, and disturbing behaviors. So this would provide folks with a place where they could go, be welcomed, and have staff that are trained to kind of address these issues, and also work with folks with the goal of obtaining permanent housing as well as connections to services and benefits. I also think that it would solve the issue with the restrooms. Obviously not in total, not everybody will go to a resource center, but again, when you have bathrooms available, folks go because they need to use them. I also think that it would provide more safety with the folks using the restrooms. So at the warming station, we do have staff on standby. So we have a door. Staff have to open up that back door for anyone to get in to use the restroom. And we're not punitive in timing folks, but we're checking on them if they've been in there for a while and asking them to come out. I appreciate Director Hannum's work with providing multiple options for the board and the community to see. But I will say, with all of these options, you are going to need to staff this. Even with the Portland Loo model, yes, there's visibility underneath, and PD and Fire can speak to this when they come up. I don't foresee PD and Fire driving by regularly and checking on this. I don't foresee public health being able to regularly be checking on this 24/7. So this is certainly something that we need to outweigh. We do know that there was a fatality in one of the porta potties in Nashua a few months ago or earlier this year. So these are things that we do need to consider. We do know folks in the community are using substances, and we know folks are dying of these overdoses, something public health is really working on trying to address and learn more about in the community. But it's certainly something that will be happening in the restrooms. I know we talked about, Director Hannum talked about crimes, not occurring in some of those models. Folks will be using substances in the Portland Loo, in a porta potty, in the City Hall public restrooms. It's a private place, and it's a place where you can sit down. So we know that that will be happening.
If I could follow up.
Alderwoman Kelly?
So I remember your many presentations on the Welcome Center, and I know that the brick and mortar aspect of that is, a significant capital cost. Do you think there's an opportunity to do a pilot Welcome Center while we still have Elm?
I certainly welcome that idea. So we have posted the staffing positions, and Director Bagley and I have several interviews tomorrow for staffing. So it would just be something that if we were planning to open up Elm Street during extra hours or earlier than the December 1st deadline, we would just need to work with our Human Resources Department to get folks onboarded and hired and trained.
Can I do one more follow-up?
Yes.
Do you have a sense of what that might look from a cost perspective, or could you come back to us with something?
I think we could come back to you with something. It would depend on the hours that we're looking to open these public restrooms for. If it's looking to have something open completely during the day and overnight, those numbers will be a little different than what we had for the overnight warming station.
I would love to see those numbers, and I would love your recommendation as to what would be the most helpful.
Sure.
Alderman Jettie.
So I haven't heard anyone speak about the transit, the National Transit System bus station. And you know, my memory is that when we renovated that building, one of the things we did was we made the restrooms ADA compliant. And I know in the past they had problems with you know, people using it for, you know, drug use and overdoses occurred. And that, I don't remember what it was, but I kind of remember they were talking about how they were doing something different to resolve that problem, especially as a short-term solution. Is there some way we could open the transit station? You know, I know there's an office there, you know, there's a staff person, you know, the bulk of the day. I don't know how much it would cost to have a staff person there for, you know, the nighttime hours, but isn't that a possible solution in the short term?
Yeah, I do think that there still needs to be staffing, and I think that Director Sullivan might be someone to answer that a little better. I'm not aware of any of the issues that transit was having with having those restrooms public, but we do know substance use was something that folks were doing in there. I do believe there's sharps containers in there as well. Sometimes transit will call public health if there's behavioral concerns with folks. So I think really all of the concerns we're seeing everywhere would still be a concern at transit. You would need someone there to monitor those.
Okay, and so an additional comment. I mean, you know, am I being, you know, naive or simple-minded here when I think about, you know, when we're trying to solve the problem of human waste being deposited on the streets and the sidewalks, and every solution we come up with, you know, seems to have, you know, more problems, you know. I mean, you know, can't we provide for places for people to relieve themselves to solve that problem? I mean, as far as, you know, drug use and drug overdosing, you know, people are going to be using drugs, and any, you know, any kind of a doorway. You know, I mean, people are overdosing all, you know, when overdoses occur. I'm not exaggerating the problem, but when overdoses occur, you know, they can occur in any number of places. You know, trying to provide a place for people to relieve themselves, you know, not doing that because it's adding an additional place where a drug user can go. You know, am I being, you know, naive by saying, well, I mean, you know, we're not going to solve the drug problem by eliminating toilets?
That is correct. I just wanted to be very transparent with this board that regardless of whatever model we choose, this will be an issue that we will have to be prepared to address. And there are certain liabilities with each model. But that is something we're not going to be able to address. We are trying to address the human waste factor. Our health officer wasn't able to be here tonight, but she did want me to pass along that we do have a rat problem and mouse problem in the city, and they can feed off of human waste. So that could be contributing to issues downtown as well. So it's certainly something that we need to address. Of course, human waste also brings along infectious disease and exposure to that for anyone that, you know, might be walking over it or nearby it. So I think it's certainly a priority to address, but there are things that we need to consider.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you both for pointing out the fact that the bathroom won't resolve really anything. My guess is less likely that the homeless will actually use the bathroom versus patrons to the downtown if it's maintained appropriately. And then to my colleague, Ward 5, at some point it seems like downtown in general, not actively planning it, but decided that bathrooms need to close, whether it's St. Patrick's removing the porta potty or the city making the determination that the transit bathroom isn't operational, because homeless people, people who are mentally ill, people who have substance use disorder, make people, some of might be in this room, uncomfortable. And seeing it is very uncomfortable. And when we have a bathroom where people need to use to go to the bathroom, they also do other things. And it makes people feel uncomfortable. It's just a social stigma. Yes, it's unsafe. We should not have people who work on our maintenance team carrying Narcan. That's not their job. But you had reasonable proposals that could have prevented this in the past. And I would ask, the board didn't take a vote to say no. I think it was the subcommittee ranked what was important or whatever. And I've still seen projects come forward that wasn't on that list and things prioritized. My question is, who decided not to put that or put it forward to the budget for this board to take a vote on it? Because as I'm reminded frequently, we can't tell you what to do. We can only fund what you want to do. Who in the city administration decided that that proposal that you put forward would not go in this past budget for at least this board to take a vote up or down on it?
I'll defer to Director Bagley.
Mayor?
I don't do the budget.
Well, I proposed the budget, but I went by what the priority committee established, and the number one project was the garage. Now, the garages weren't in the budget. We bonded them. That was proposed and adopted. But beyond, I forget what was the number two priority. I don't even know if we've gotten to that. Oh, the garage was the number two priority, as I recall. The design of the garage has been proposed but not adopted.
Follow up?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
But this is exactly the problem that the priority committee was supposed to avoid, doing a whole bunch of projects that we can't afford. So a priority a list was established. I wasn't even on, I didn't even vote on the committee. Staff and aldermen voted on the committee. I just followed the recommendations.
Thank you. And this next question is maybe more for Director Hannum, but we have bonded projects already in place downtown that have designs finalized, as we just heard from the mayor. Why aren't we using the bonded funds to design a bathroom in the Elm Street or High Street garage? High Street's been selected potentially as a site. Why can't, there's got to be water, there's fire suppression devices. Why can't we have those type of bathrooms built in, or at the Riverwalk where we have bonding funds available? Why do we need to take additional money when there's bonds available to build, and if designs haven't been finalized?
Yeah, I can say the High Street Garage, Liz Hannum, Economic Development Director, for the record. So I can say that we do have a bathroom that used to be public in the High Street Garage, and we had very similar concerns, and it was expensive to continuously maintain and fix things. And so it was very tucked away, and so we decided not to keep them open. I think that was maybe 5 years ago or so. We are maintaining it as a staff bathroom, so it will continue to be used as a staff bathroom. But the concerns are when you tuck things away, that you can't see behaviors happening. And as they mentioned, we don't think any of these things are going to stop the behaviors altogether, but there are better options that could kind of at least help us find them earlier. And in the garages is not a good place for that.
I respectfully disagree.
Okay.
I think the more options for bathrooms, the better. Not just because there should be absolutely, people, no matter who they are, homeless or housed, they're equal to the government.
Yeah.
The government cannot tell someone that because we think you might do something in a public restroom, we need you to be safe and there should be staff there. No, we don't need to do that at all. That we're policing and enforcing something that's not even a crime. Maybe if someone's using drugs, that's a crime. That's a police intervention. But if someone, decides to stay warm in a high street garage bathroom, I don't have a problem with that. And trespassing on public property, probably not. I think we had a lawsuit about that here regarding trespassing in City Hall. So I don't know why we would start treating these people any different, because obviously you guys did. At some point, the city administration, from the high street garages to the other public restrooms, aren't open, and we have crap on the streets. We have urine in the streets. I'm parsing my language, but city administration is part of the problem. You guys made decisions that led to this, and now people are upset and they want a bathroom. But we have other options here, there. Tomorrow, we could open them all up and still have these long-term plans for something that's more economically appropriate for the downtown. That's not just for people who are unhoused, but also patrons who are going to strolls or whatever it might be. But to say it's not going to be safe to go to the bathroom, I mean, we can't do that. We can't.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to say that we shouldn't have particular people in the public restrooms. I was just saying if there are easier ways to help mitigate some of the issues that we see, we are trying to offer those as options. So that was my only.
Just one last thing.
Alderman
One, I know also you weren't, thank you, Madam President. I know you weren't here to make those decisions, and you're taking the brunt of the frustration. So I just need the public to know, Director Hammond was not here when these decisions were made. But we have neoliberalism type policies that have destroyed the housing infrastructure in our country, and how we treat the homeless. We're pushing them out, so buyers that come in don't see them, and they build these huge condos that are really just hotels for engineers that live here for a year or two and go out and buy their house in the suburbs afterwards. And it's a continuous cycle, driving up the rent costs, keeping property values high, and pricing people out of their homes to when we can't get someone on a Section 8 voucher who has Social Security out of the shelter and into even senior housing. So it's just so many different things. I love the bathroom idea. I can't wait for a bathroom to be built, but there are other things that can solve the problem tomorrow. And my colleague at large has legislation about bathrooms here. There's other bathrooms, but we could do other things today, and why we work for a long-term solution.
Mayor?
All right, well, if the Board of Aldermen thinks we should open like the high street bathrooms, we can do that. I mean, this was not, as I recall, a decision that we don't want certain people to use the bathrooms. It was that people could die in the bathroom. People shoot up and OD in the bathroom, and no one can see them. So unless you're checking every 5 or 10 minutes, you might end up with someone dead. So it was a life-saving measure. We've had Matt Sullivan can talk about the bus station, but the whole building was redesigned to make sure that you could see people in the bathroom, and they couldn't see whether someone was in the bathroom. And the whole building was designed so that people couldn't go into the bathroom, shoot up, and die. So that has been the issue, as I have understood it.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to get back to why we're here, and that's discussing the outdoor toilet facility. And it seems to be the common denominator here. You know what I mean? Downtown merchants can open up their own bathrooms, and there'd be one, several per block, but they don't want to, and I can understand that. Because who wants to invite it in? I would be guided to invite maybe some people into my own home, you know what I mean? So the thing is, looking at this, I don't care where it is. It could be on Mars. But what is the common denominator problem here is enclosure. Do you agree, in a way, agree with me? Because everything comes back, whether it be the bus station, the public, in the garage area, City Hall, or something like that. Anywhere that's an enclosed environment can be a threat to these unsheltered people who are on narcotics or drugs. And so therefore, like, I do agree. I've seen it. I've lived it. I'm probably one of the few, maybe one or two more. I have administrated Narcan more than I would like to. Okay? But I see the environment of it. And to me, I think as we look, and I know I'm trying to sell the Portland Lou, and I apologize. But the key is to having a place, like you pointed out, I think, in what you said, having a place that you can physically see in goes a long way. Yes, this is expensive, I admit. But that's part of the safety that we're getting into here. You know, don't lose the looking why we're here. Because people are doing some things in the street that we do find disgusting. And we need to mitigate, administer to it and everything. And I don't know. And yet have a degree of privacy. And that seems to be maintained with the Portland Lou as well. And I think on a test basis of one, maybe we can see how potentially others. Now, somebody brought up earlier what to do in the interim. Well, we could put the plastic ones in. We do have a fire department. They all been there. They put them out before, so they'll know what to do. You know what I mean? But it would get you by in the temporary fix with it. It's not the panacea that I think all of us are looking for. But we can cover in the short term with those, ADA compliant, construction grade, whatever, porta potties, and yet get us into our ultimate objective or something like a more permanent solution. And I think that's what's needed. I mean, again, I cringe with unattended, particularly this building, a municipal building, City Hall. It's a big area down there. And did we not close it before for security reasons? So why reinvent the wheel of a problem? So it was a great idea, I agree. But we closed it for a particular reason. And it seems, looking at what everybody has said, I wrote down an enclosed environment seems to be the key that we should open our minds to on answering this type of problem. Thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome. Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam President. I think we're making assumptions that anybody that goes into a bathroom and shoots up is homeless. That's 100% not what we're saying. A 19-year-old kid that's living at home that happens to be on Main Street can go into the High Street garage and shoot up and die. So the safety of not having a bathroom like that where something could happen like that, I think is unsafe to anybody. It doesn't matter if they're homeless or not. And I also think that, if we're using a bathroom as a warming station for one person, that means there's other people that aren't going to be able to go in there and use that bathroom. So it would be no good anyway. That only for that one person would it be good. So I think the High Street garage thing, I don't know. Again, we can open it and try it, but I want to know if something happens, And then my question, my actual question is, so one thing we haven't talked about at all is Mine Falls. So I'm curious, you said there's a rat problem and a mouse problem in the city because of some of the stuff that's happening. What's the situation down there when it comes to human waste? Are we having similar issues? I know the businesses aren't necessarily like Main Street businesses, but there are still some businesses down in that area, especially at the Pine Street extension, and obviously into the woods. Does anybody know anything more about the situation there?
So there's actually two porta potties. There's one at the bottom of Spine Road, and that's meant for the park, so that was already there. folks weren't always walking down there to use that porta potty. They were actually disturbing some of the businesses to use their bathrooms. So the businesses actually reached out to us at Public Health and had requested that we put a porta potty down there closer to the encampment. So there are 2 porta potties currently there now. And we're really not getting, at least I haven't received, I don't believe our public health officer has received complaints about human waste as much at Pine Street Extension as compared to downtown.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you for the follow-up. So how are those porta potties? What kind of shape are they in? Are they working?
They're working and they're in good shape. I do go in there.
Oh, well, that seems to be a good response to maybe porta potties on Main Street?
And again, there is a lot of people at that site. So again, if someone were to go in there and be in there for an extended period of time, there are other people that would be checking on them. So it's not necessarily staff, it's other encampment residents.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you. So when I see, and I mentioned earlier that porta potty's on fire, right? So the 2 that I know of that happened to were in Lincoln Park. Now, Lincoln Park is not seen from the road, right? Or the one behind Holman, behind North Common Field. Again, not one that's easily seen by the road. And again, I hate porta potties, I hate them. But if you put a temporary porta potties on Main Street, they're right out in the open, where people see them, police drive by, cars drive by, less likely that they're going to be burned to the ground or tons of problems, as long as they're maintained on a regular basis. So I mean, again, I'm not pushing for that. I just think if they're working in one place, could there be a temporary fix in another until we could look more into these other options?
I do think so, and I do want to just put into perspective for the board. So we monitor in public health the overdoses in Nashua monthly, and the majority of overdoses are happening in homes, not in the community. Manchester's the opposite. So I will say that, we don't want to scare folks into thinking if we put a bathroom, there's going to be a ton of overdoses. We have had bathrooms before, and those numbers were still more often in home settings.
Great, thank you.
I have a list. Alderman Senate.
Thank you, Madam President. Excuse me. First off, thank you both for stepping up here and providing some context to the conversation. We're kind of having a rolling conversation right here. We started on a budgetary one, and now we're kind of more in the logistics and the implications of everything. And your commentary has added a lot of context to that, and Alderman Moran kind of helped contextualize that as well. And something I think we need to consider, because again, there's clearly a lot of favorability around the horseshoe for the Portland Loo model. But I worry when I consider that cost, and I consider the cost of implementing that to a degree that we might see some tangible return on resolving some of the matters we're trying to resolve, is how long do those sit in place until we realize that those can present the same amount of problems that previous solutions have presented, and we give up on those? And then we have a $400,000 steel bollard sitting in the middle of downtown somewhere. We have infrastructure that we've acknowledged here that we identified problems, quote unquote, with, and we restricted it. We've discussed the reality of how long an overdose takes to set in and be beyond the point of reversal. We acknowledge that our police force, while they do the yeoman's work out there in the community, they're understaffed and they're stretched thin. It would be great, yeah, if we could have an officer on this to monitor the presence of somebody in these Portland Loos at all times. But like we just heard, 15 minutes is all it takes, maybe less, depending on strains and mixtures. I worry what we're getting into here. We have infrastructure in place. We're presenting new solutions that we could backpedal a little and implement in the meantime. And we heard at the last meeting at the library that we do need long-term solutions, which maybe this Portland Loo model is. But even the business owners told us we need Band-Aids as well. Band-Aids aren't perfect, Band-Aids fall off, Band-Aids have shortcomings. You can bleed through a Band-Aid. Band-Aid may not be ADA accessible right now. It may not, you know, keep somebody from trying to shelter within a bathroom, but it's something. And I just worry we're getting hung up on something way out of reach when we have something in front of us now that we could do. And that's just where I'm at with this right now. But thank you both for being here. You've added a lot to the conversation.
Do we want to give the police department or maybe Director Sullivan a chance to be questioned? Director Sullivan, sorry.
Just in the, while we're talking, I got a correction text from our parking manager. The High Street Garage bathroom was never open to the public. There was a porta potty in the Elm Street Garage, and about 7 years ago, someone overdosed and passed away in it, and so we removed it. So that's a clarification, sorry.
Thank you.
I'll be brief because you guys have talked about a lot. Downtown
Can
business
you introduce
community.
yourself for the record?
Sure, sorry. Jim Tollner, one of the police commissioners in Nashville.
Thank you.
Downtown businesses have asked the city, to do something now, right? You saw that meeting that you had a couple weeks ago. So I think Alderman Clemens had a great idea. Open up the bathrooms, see how it works. You have about 6 months to find out whether it works and how it affects what the problem is downtown. Let's be real, you're gonna have the same problems you had before, and that's why we closed it. But at least you're aware of what the problems will be. We don't have a bathroom problem downtown, okay? We have a homeless problem with people defecating downtown. So let's be clear, downtown, if we didn't have a homeless problem, doesn't need bathrooms, okay? It's a situation that the homeless situation has created for those business owners. I will just say very quickly, there's good things that have come out of the meeting that you guys had at the library. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, right, Mayor? Corporation Council, the mayor, the Department of Health, and the police department met, and we've come up with 2 pieces of legislation that will be in your packet next week. I'd ask you to seriously consider those 2 pieces of legislation. One of them is a no-brainer. When you get it on Tuesday night, you literally could do a first reading, a second reading, and pass it right there. That's how simple and basic that piece of legislation is. Second piece is going to be overnight staying and camping. It's another piece of legislation. I ask that you look at it quickly, take it around the horseshoe. It's getting cold. We owe these people the opportunity to find a quality place to live. Where they're living right now is not right. And if they have to move come November, December, it's going to be a hell of a lot tougher than moving right now. So try the bathroom, okay? Years ago, I do remember the problems that we had. And they're not going to go away. But at least you have an opportunity to work on something right now. You could open that bathroom up tomorrow. You could tell the business owners downtown, hey, we're giving this a shot. Let's see what it does. And see. And between that and maybe the combination of the 2 pieces of legislation, maybe we've addressed it. $400,000 and waiting 6 months for it to happen, that's a big ask for everybody. Thank you.
Can I just make it clear about something? I'm not against opening the City Hall bathrooms. I'm just saying we got to be realistic about monitoring costs. And I'm not against spending that money either. I just think we need to be careful about, make sure we have enough money, enough staff to make the thing work.
Right. And our overall concern when we first heard about this, and then I'll turn it over to Deputy Kenny, because he has some information on some numbers, is we actually think it'll bring more people to downtown. Okay? And as you're trying to solve a problem, you actually may be creating a little bit more of a headache.
Brian Kenny, Deputy Chief of Police, the Police Department here in Nashua. I don't have much over and above what Commissioner Tollner said, but I would just add that we hear all the complaints from the citizens every day, multiple times a day. And we try to do our part. We try to be the police department that folks in the city want us to be. So we heard overwhelmingly that Main Street is a problem, and we tried to react to that. Now, the police department, I think we all agree, cannot solve this issue. We're a small piece of it, right? But what can we do to curb the behavior, the defecation on Main Street, the harassing of customers that are experiencing outdoor dining? You know, even something as simple as jaywalking, walking intoxicated into the street, things like that. What can we do to help with that? Well, we can help with that by doing enforcement, and that's what we're doing. We have 8 hours a day of enforcement on Main Street on day shift and 8 hours on second shift. And that is in the form of ticketing if you have an open container, right? So the days of walking on Main Street with a beer are hopefully over. The days of having whatever trash in your hand and throwing on the sidewalk on Main Street are hopefully limited as well. If you're defecating behind Sharon Medical, for example, which is a part of Main Street where we had a huge problem, that's going to be met with arrests and things like that. Like I said, small piece of the solution. But I've talked to a few business owners in the couple weeks that we've done this, and they said they have seen a small difference already, and they're happy we're out there. So we're doing that, and I guess my only 2 cents on the bathroom, while I totally appreciate the idea, and the idea that it might help alleviate some of this stuff, we are trying to de-incentivize the people who are engaging in the criminal conduct. And I'm not talking about every homeless person in the city. I'm talking about the people who are committing the offenses that I just listed. We're trying to de-incentivize them from being on Main Street and engaging in that conduct. And the way we look at it is if we add additional comforts to Main Street for these particular folks, it's conflicting a little bit with what we are trying to do as the police department. So I would just ask you to take that for whatever it's worth to you. And I would just like to add a point that LaTanya just made a minute ago. I'm a little skeptical. Maybe it'll work if we do it, and I hope it does. But I'm skeptical if I'm on the north end of Main Street and I'm experiencing that I have to use the restroom, that I'm going to walk to the SK taxi stand to use the facilities, if that's where we choose to put it. LaTanya mentioned a minute ago, we have a huge encampment at Pine Street Extension. We have had a porta potty at the entrance to Spine Road that entire time. And I don't want to take words out of her mouth, but she just said that we were noticing that they weren't even traversing the small little hill to use the restroom that was already there. So if it's not working there where the folks are actually staying, I'm a little skeptical that it's going to work on Main Street. And if we do it, I hope it does, but I just wanted to point that out. And that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I saw someone from the fire department. Did you wish to weigh in on anything this evening?
Sure.
I don't mean to call you out, but you know, since you're here.
Tell us your thoughts.
Hi, Adam Pouliot, Assistant Fire Chief. I guess all I have to say is, you know, our mission is to provide fire and emergency services here in the city. And if that's providing emergency services to a bathroom below grade in the basement of City Hall, or it's in a porta potty downtown, or wherever it may be, that's what we'll do. We'll figure it out. We'll get whoever needs help, and we'll get them out of whatever bathroom they're in and into the ambulance and off to the hospital. So we don't really have an opinion on which you choose. If there's an emergency, we'll figure it out.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thanks. Director Sullivan? Since you're here.
Might as well say a few words. Matt Sullivan, Community Development Division Director. I just wanted to comment briefly on some of the discussion on the restrooms within the transit center. Certainly, some of the statements were absolutely accurate. When the transit center went through a renovation, a fairly significant renovation between 2021 and 2023, we did redesign the restroom space within that facility. We have 2 small restrooms in there that are currently available during the normal operating hours of the transit center building. The reason for that is that those restrooms, while they are easier to supervise, there has to be an on-site staff person to actually supervise them to effectively carry out supervision. And so from normal business hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., we have a transit clerk on site. They regularly check in on the restrooms. They ensure that conduct in there is safe and suitable for the facility. We've had significant issues over the years. We've had to temper hours. We've had to close the restrooms at times. Even in a new facility, we've had to invest funds in repairing toilets and other things. That's not to say that those repairs would not be needed under normal circumstances, but we've shared in some of the conduct issues, I think, that have been spoken about this evening. I'll be clear that regardless of whether it's the City Hall restrooms or the Transit Center restrooms, we're prepared to open those restrooms if absolute need be. My ask, of course, overseeing the transit folks, is that we be prepared to take on repair costs and staffing necessary to actually supervise the space. I don't think both bathroom facilities are absolutely necessary, both transit and City Hall, but certainly we're open to being part of the solution. There's no question about that. The only other thing I'd say just from an operational perspective is that unlike the City Hall restrooms that are substantially larger, the Transit Center restrooms, we would need to find a way to sort of partition off that space so that folks going into the restrooms would not have access to other areas of the Transit Center where damage could be done. And that may introduce a complication into any planning that we need to do. But again, we're happy to be a part of the solution, but supervision is absolutely critical if we're going to open that facility. But happy to hear and participate in any discussion that takes place and answer any questions this evening.
I have Alderman Moran and then Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. Can you define supervision?
Alderman Moran, I'll admit I haven't given it great consideration before tonight, but certainly my expectation based on the configuration of the restrooms is that someone would need to be checking on the facility once every 15 minutes, let's say. That's the number that comes to mind for me right now. I'm not suggesting that we need someone sitting in the transit clerk's window at all times, but there needs to be someone going in the facility regularly. We actually used to close the Transit Center in its entirety at 5 p.m., but because of the cold weather and other extreme temperature issues, we started opening up the lobby later hours. But even then, we have drivers going in and out regularly that are sort of checking on the space every 15 to 30 minutes. The same level of frequency checking on the bathrooms would be necessary if we were to open those up.
Moran.
Thank you. And I think it's essential that government provide essential services just like that. And if it's requiring those, what you're calling supervision, but really just staff time in your facilities to be present, not observe particularly. I'm not putting words in your, but just to be present. I think that's upon us to do that, to make sure that anyone can use the restroom and it's clean and cleanly. And I'll go back to a fact about life-saving measures, right? Because someone overdosed, we removed a porta potty or whatever it might be. Personal experience, my grandmother died of a heart attack on the toilet. That's a very common. I have a, Director Bagley is a nurse. That can happen in any one of our public restrooms. The way of which someone is dying shouldn't matter if someone's having a life event. So just keep that anything can happen in the bathrooms, anything. But I think if they closed before and we needed the supervision to make it work, we should do those things. I have a question for the PD.
Are they still here?
Yes,
Oh,
Captain Kenny.
okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. Deputy?
Assistant Deputy Chief. When we first met, he was a captain. May I?
Yes.
Is there still just the one patrol down on Spitbrook for the casino area and up through per shift? Is it still one patrol that covers down on on Spitbrook daily?
Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry, I thought we were talking about downtown. There's less patrols down there than there used to be. So there used to be, I'm going back 10 years maybe, there used to be a patrol from Spitbrook Road south to the state line.
Right.
That takes the mall and all the stores down there. We don't have the staffing. We don't have the staffing for it right now. So the sector that covers that is all of Spitbrook Road to include up to East Dunstable. We'll pass the Tara all the way down towards Ridge Road. Is one officer down there.
And may I?
Yes.
And I wanted to point that out because I live in Ward 9 and it's dangerous. We have an intersection that we've been working with Public Works. People are running through stop signs. Children go to the Bicentennial School, but they don't get the appreciation that downtown gets with a couple extra patrols to keep the homeless away from the downtown businesses. Further down the road, we had someone actually hit a father trying to cross the street because it's not safe to cross the street in a neighborhood where their apartments go into Press Cafe. So I'm still always frustrated that other parts of the city are experiencing not enough staffing for policing. Sidewalks aren't present, and this is not your, I should be speaking to Director Sullivan. He's the top guy on that side that has made decisions there are no sidewalks. Joke. But we're getting, parts of the city are going left, are just unsafe. And a bunch of people get riled up downtown, and now we got plenty of police down there all of a sudden. But what's being done for these other parts of the city? I saw Kelly Ayotte in wanting to have tougher traffic law, which is great. But what are we going to do to actually have patrols to enforce the laws in parts of the city that don't get as much attention as downtown, where families live, where people are going to school and crossing the street and can't because no one stops at a stop sign. We only have the one patrol who's now covering a casino that has gang involvement crossing the two state lines. Like, what are we doing?
So I would add that, you know, the casino hires details, so there are more officers. They're not scheduled officers. They're hired privately. So there is a little bit more police presence down there for that establishment. And I would just say that we're trying to handle a city of 100,000 people with finite resources. Right? And so we have to respond to the complaints. I guess my best response to that is the complaints downtown are tenfold what I have down on Spitbrook Road. So we have to take the complaints we have in the busy neighborhoods, the high crime areas, and we have to meet it with more enforcement because that's where the majority of the crime is happening. I'm not minimizing what's happening on Spitbrook Road. Of course, there's crime on Spitbrook Road and there's traffic issues, but the majority of our complaints about crime does involve our urban neighborhoods, and that's where we have to have the bulk of our resources, or we're going to lose those neighborhoods.
Follow up?
Alderman Moran.
Thank you. That's great, right? To know that there's more calls downtown. What do you need in funding to make the entire city not have to rely on what's the best way to phrase it? How do we get you more police officers?
Oh, if I had that answer, I'd be happy man. I don't have that answer. I wish chief.
Yes.
I would line them up outside the PD right now.
It's very important to what is happening on parts of the city that have the high traffic. And I'm not saying that it's people being confronted like a hostile type of crime, potentially. But we have road rage, we have inability to just read a stop sign, see that you're in a school zone. And it's not just on Spitbrook, it's on other parts. It's on Amherst Street, it's throughout the entire city. We got car accidents every day. Our roads, our highways and our roads are a failure most of the day. But these are other safety issues that happen, and they need resolution. And downtown gets us so much. It's more of a statement than a resolution.
Fair enough.
Thank you. Alderwoman Kelly?
Oh, while you're there, well, I have two, but since you're here, I'm going to ask you this one. So obviously, we have looked at you having boots on the ground in downtown as sort of a pilot program. I think we heard the number right now is around $30,000 a month. I assume that's because you're covering it with overtime. Is that the case?
Yes, ma'am.
And can we then extrapolate that out to that would be the yearly cost to keep enforcement at the level that you're currently doing?
Correct.
Okay. Those were my questions for him, but I have another one if I could.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My question actually was for Director Hannum, and I've had it for probably an hour, but we're going to get back to it. One of the things we keep circling around is that the infrastructure, whether we have bathrooms, bring bathrooms in, that's important, but also the staffing and the maintenance. So I did some digging, talked to Manchester about what they have done, and one of the things they did, you mentioned, was just that street team ambassadorship. Do you guys have any information about success stories there or cost? Just sort of interested in that piece of it.
Sure, I can Liz Hannum, Economic Development Director. I can go over what we talked about. I talked to my counterpart up in Manchester. They are contracting out for a clean team. They do 6 days a week, 7 teams of 2. They have a much larger district than we do, but their annual cost is $530,000 for that contract. And that, I think, my counterpart essentially said that was the most return on investment they've ever experienced. They, however, are using ARPA funds left, so they're going to have to go into their general fund budget next year. So they're preparing for that cost, but they've had it for 2 years now outside of their general fund. And so they've proven that it's been very successful. She said it was the best program that she's ever invested in. But I think that they're going to have that conversation again when they have to go into general funds. But it has been really successful. I've seen it in lots of other communities. They've even done programs where they hired people that were in the public health process, or unhoused. So they have kind of done a pilot program where they hired all of the community members that were capable of holding down a job and actually creating the clean team out of the population. So I've seen that be really successful. So there are lots of models that we could use for that, and I think we're still trying to figure out what that clean team could be. I know we've talked a little bit about some of the union issues that might come up. So that we're trying to figure out the what needs to be in-house and what can be outside contractors. So we're still in the process of really figuring out what that would look like. But I would bet that we're under the 530 that Manchester is spending, but not by much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alderman Lopez.
I just have questions for the police, if they don't mind.
It's like round robin.
Sorry. So my first question is, given the number of more crimes reported downtown and the recognition that there's denser neighborhoods and more people that are present, the downtown business owners organized 2 meetings and were looking for police support in that, and they were told the police wouldn't be attending at that time. Wouldn't that have been, and they did get the communication that the police were stepping up the patrols, which is good, but why wasn't that done sooner? And did the decision for the police to show up tonight have anything to do with the legislation that's being introduced next week?
I can answer the first question.
Okay. I can answer the first question. They were asked to attend, and we thought there were going to be other meetings at City Hall. And it being the political season, we thought it'd be best to have those meetings when they were scheduled by City Hall. That was the first one.
Okay, so the meetings at the library, you weren't sure they were important enough, or they were a political strategy?
We were
I'm
not
sure.
invited to the meeting at the library.
You weren't invited to the one by Great American Downtown?
We
Or, I
were-
guess Great American Downtown wasn't the one who organized the first one.
We were asked by Great American Downtown. We thought there was going to be another meeting at City Hall, so we figured we would attend that one.
Okay. Well, there was some confusion there too, because a number of the downtown business owners thought we moved too quickly in responding and had wanted to participate but couldn't do it on less than a week's notice, so.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. After the meeting that you all had at the library, we've been in touch very closely with downtown. I would say 3 or 4 times a week. The chief and the deputy actually went down and met a number of businesses downtown. So if you ask the downtown merchants, have we responded in the way they asked us to? Individually and directly, we have done that. Okay.
So I would agree with that completely. And living downtown, I would say the last 2 weeks, there's been a much, much, much more visible police presence. There's also been a much, much more visible homeless outreach presence. And I can't necessarily say which one is winning per se, whether we're preventing people from getting into situations or whether we're policing people once they get into those situations. So I think both are necessary. My question is, why were the business owners of the opinion that police weren't responding to calls or, visible? Why was that the request or the ask?
Listen, the only thing I can tell you is if you talk to Bagel Alley or Mary Lou or other people downtown, every single time they've made an inquiry, we personally have gone and visited them, and multiple times. So I think the additional offices downtown have been great. We spent a lot of time down at the Pine Street Extension, and the deputy can talk to you about the number of calls. He has them. But we spent a lot of time downtown.
Well, I think the question should be asked just because they asked it. It's been my experience over the last year that, 3 years at least, that the police have been working very, very closely with public health, have added a number of new supports. So I appreciate what the police have been doing, but I know the question was raised, and so I wanted to bring it up as well. I know that right now everybody is pointing at downtown and saying, why is downtown getting so much more money? Why is downtown getting so much more police attention? I mean, if you want the crime, you guys can have it, but I don't think anybody does. I think there's a lot of people trying to use the same spaces downtown, and there's a lot of people with very, very different needs. So the police do unfairly, I think, have to intervene and be ambassadors to all of those different needs. And I am fully aware that National Police is very active right at St. Patrick's when they're doing their day cafe program, and I appreciate it. When I hear people saying that only one solution versus the other are necessary, and that we need to either police more or enforce more, or we just need to invest. I think we need to be looking at both. You can't walk on one foot, you need to use 2 feet. So I think the partnership that has been working has been very beneficial. And while people can point at the things that haven't been solved, it's been said a million times tonight alone that we're probably not going to solve homelessness tonight, but the amount of work that the police and public health have been interdicting before it becomes a major crisis, I think needs to be taken into account. And unfortunately, the only people who know how much work is being done are public health and the police. So I wanted to ask you those questions so you could answer them.
Yeah, okay. You want to give them the numbers on the Pine Street extension?
I just wanted to add, and I guess I thought we were going to have a little bit more conversation about Pine Street, but so I prepared a little bit of some statistics just so we can understand the gravity of what's happening down there. We have upwards of 75 people living back there at this point, and as of from July, August, and September, the police, and this is underreported because there's no physical address to that location. So most of the time when I give you exact data, it's because I have an exact address to attribute it to. But what we could find over the course of the past few days is 117 confirmed responses to Pine Street Extension at the edge of Mines Falls in July, August, and September. Now, to be transparent, a lot of, a decent chunk of those are proactive responses, right? Because if I have 75 people living at the edge of the woods, I have to actively patrol it. And I've told the officers, I don't want you walking into that encampment without letting us know over the radio that you're in there for safety reasons, because it isn't safe. I have overdoses, I have fights, I have robberies, I have drug offenses, and there are people visiting, and I don't want to speak for public health again, but I know they back me up. There are people visiting that encampment that don't necessarily live there. And if you ask me, they're preying on the folks that do live there because they're providing drugs, they're coming from Massachusetts. It's getting progressively worse, and I fear how bad it's going to get if we don't do something.
Can I just ask 2 follow-ups?
Yes, sir.
First, sorry, I had to ask her, but I appreciate it. Just for perspective, how many people would you estimate are in this room?
In this room? I don't know, 60?
I just want people to understand how many people 75 people or more actually is. And then the second question is, how would you say that that number compares to, say, number of visits to 23 Temple?
It's more than 23 Temple Street. I'll tell you that for sure. Do
We heard a lot about 23 Temple Street at the meeting, the last meeting. So, again, for perspective, and it's my opinion, but I think it's based in fact, the police and public health have been doing a lot to keep downtown safe and livable in a very, very difficult circumstance.
I would just point out, Alderman, I get your point. Pine Street Extension is an open area, right? So members of the public are walking through there, or used to walk through there. There's a lot that don't anymore, at least that part of Mines Falls. and they call us all the time. 23 Temple Street is a difficult comparison because it's enclosed. So unless a resident is making a complaint to us, we're not going to get that call for service there. But to your point, it is a super busy building.
Alderman Clemmons?
Thank you, Madam President. I think we've had a lot of great conversation tonight. I do find it a bit. I did find some of the talk a bit concerning, especially when we talk about all of the bathrooms that have closed over time, and we wonder why there's a problem. I think it's, while I understand that there are going to be people who are going to do bad things in private spaces, I think we have to, as a society, assume the best in people. Meaning that the bathroom is there for people to use the facilities, and if somebody goes in there and does drugs, or I guess that would be the worst thing, or whatever, that they're breaking the law, right? And the thing about it is like, they likely would, if that bathroom wasn't open, then they'd be doing that somewhere else. So, from my perspective, I understand that, we want to make sure that these facilities are monitored and that they're safe. And I think we can, put our best foot forward to do that. But I think it dehumanizes people to assume that if we open up these facilities, that all of a sudden all these drug users are going to go in there and start using them and ODing. I mean, that might happen. There might be somebody that does that. But I think, that is, for the one individual that may do that, or the 2 or 3 individuals that may do that, the 50 other people who go into that restroom to use it the way it was intended, I think you're doing a major disservice to. So while I appreciate talking about all of these different solutions, and I do agree that, if we open something up here, whether it be the transit facility or it's, the bathrooms here in City Hall, yeah, somebody's not going to walk all the way down the other end of Main Street. They may not. I mean, I would hope they would, but I get that. So we have to have a multi-pronged solution to this. But I think, I think we need to really address the bigger issue, which appears to me to be that we need more people out there, and maybe the money is better spent on just opening these facilities, maintaining them, and then spending the money on a social worker, somebody that can go and that's their job, I guess. If that's what we want, if we want a bathroom monitor, I suppose we could hire one. But I think my point is that I think we are making a bigger deal out of something that that's probably not as big of a deal. In other words, people OD all the time. They do. It's sad, and it's not something that we want to see happen in our public facilities, but it's the risk you take when you open up a public facility. It reminds me, I went to Manchester just to go downtown. It was it was this past spring, and we went to try to find a place to park, and it was busy downtown. It was a Friday evening, So we went into one of the city-owned garages. Then we parked up on the second or third floor, I can't remember. And I parked near the elevator and went over to use the elevator. They turned them off. So then I said, okay, well, you know what? I'm like, we'll just walk down the stairs, right, which is right next to the elevator. They closed the doors. That's Manchester's solution to their homeless situation. So they opened the garage up, but then we had to walk down the traffic all the way around down back what we drove up. Is that what we want in Nashua? No, we're better than that. We're better than that. We can open up the bathrooms. It's going to be okay. I think we're overcomplicating some of this stuff. Is it going to be expensive? The operational costs might be expensive, yes. But is it part of the solution? Yeah, I think it's part of the solution. I think it's a much better solution to use the facilities that we have already in place and then try to, the money that we might have spent on a new bathroom somewhere, maybe if we're worried about, that we need one on each end of the street, maybe we do the porta potty somewhere, the cheaper solution, since that seems to be working down in the Pine Street area, or the Pine Street extension, and then, but we take that money that we would spend on all of that infrastructure for any one of these things, and we say, well, we'll put it towards the police overtime for downtown. And then we'll put another solution in place, right? It's kind of to what my colleague in Ward 4 was talking about. You can't just do one thing. We've got to do multiple things. But if we spend all the money on a bathroom, then I don't know where we're going to come up with the rest of the money. So, thank you.
Commissioner Tollner?
Yeah, just very quick, I wanted to address a question that Alderman Moran had. The mayor last year came forward and allowed us in our budget to increase the number of officers that we're allowed to have. So he's been very supportive of that. So the problem is we don't have enough officers. The problem is recruiting them and bringing them in. So we've been very successful in getting a number of experienced officers, but for the record, to answer your question, the mayor has been extremely supportive, actually increased the number of officers that we're allowed in our budget. It's just difficult to bring them in. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. I'll just start by thanking everyone for being here and really digging into this. It was really interesting to hear from all of the different city departments. I'm going to wrap it by talking a little bit about this. Someone asked me the other day why we haven't done anything. Homelessness has been an issue. It's been in front of us for a long time. And my answer was very honest. It was money, right? Public health has told us over and over and over again that a welcome center is a critical piece of our community response. And we haven't done it. And we haven't done it for a lot of the same reasons of Stellos, right? We waited until Stellos was an emergency before we had to do it because we had to make those choices. What I want to point out, and I think is so important to this overall conversation, is that whatever we decide to do costs money. Enforcement costs money, infrastructure will cost money, personnel and people cost money. And we have a finite amount of it in our city. So what we have to think about is what is the solution that we're coming forward with, and what does that say about our community values? I will share a piece of information that I have. Corporation for Supportive Housing works in this space. They have a couple of policy backgrounders, but to jail a homeless person costs $131 a day. To hospitalize that same homeless person costs $1,200 a day. If we actually invest in and get supportive housing into our community, that is $72 per day. I know that's a long-term solution, but when we think about it like that, I think there's a lot for this board to think about, and it's not just bathrooms and what are we going to do in the short term, but what is the long term?
Well, it was a very interesting discussion this evening. I'd like to thank everyone here, even the people that just came to listen. We have a lot to think about and take some action on, so I'm looking forward to the legislation that's going to be introduced next week, and we will continue the conversation at that point. Does anyone have anything, any final? No? Oh, Tom.
I just wanted to point out, I appreciate Commissioner Tolner's service to the city and his comments, but we also supported the mayor's position on the budget because we voted for it, so.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make the motion that the October 9th, 2025 Special Board of Aldermen be adjourned.
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned at 9:35 PM.